The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Maria wiped down the sticky tables at Tony's diner for what felt like the 100th time that evening. Her back ached, her feet throbbed in her worn-out sneakers, and she could feel the exhaustion creeping into her bones. The clock on the wall showed 9:47 p.m., and she still had 3 more hours until her shift ended. At 28 years old, Maria never imagined her life would look like this. She remembered being a little girl, dreaming of becoming a teacher, imagining herself in a classroom full of bright-eyed children. But life had other plans. Now she found herself working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on in their tiny apartment and put food on the table for her 6-year-old daughter Lily. The dinner rush had ended hours ago, leaving only a handful of customers scattered throughout the diner. A trucker sat at the counter, slowly sipping his 3rd cup of coffee while scrolling through his phone. An elderly couple shared a piece of apple pie in the corner booth, whispering sweet nothings to each other like they were still teenagers. And then there was the old man who came in every Tuesday night, ordering the same meatloaf dinner and leaving exactly the same tip. Maria's mind wandered to Lily, who was probably fast asleep by now in Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment upstairs from their own. The kind elderly woman had become like a grandmother to Lily, watching her every evening when Maria worked the night shift. Mrs. Rodriguez never asked for much money, claiming that Lily's company was payment enough. But Maria knew the woman was just being generous, and it made her feel both grateful and guilty at the same time. Money was always tight. Maria calculated every dollar, every quarter, every penny. She knew exactly how much was in her checking account, down to the last cent. After paying rent, utilities, groceries, and Mrs. Rodriguez for babysitting, there was barely anything left. Sometimes she would stand in the grocery store, holding a bag of apples, wondering if she could afford them or if she should put them back and stick to the cheaper bananas instead. The diner's door chimed, and Maria looked up to see a small figure walking through the entrance. It was a boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, with dark hair that looked like someone had tried to comb it but gave up halfway through. His clothes were clean but clearly had seen better days. The knees of his jeans were worn thin, and his jacket was a size too big, probably a hand-me-down from an older brother or cousin. The boy looked around nervously before sliding into a booth near the back of the diner. Maria grabbed a menu and a glass of water, making her way over to him. As she got closer, she noticed he seemed anxious, checking an old flip phone every few seconds and glancing toward the door like he was waiting for someone. "Hi there, sweetie," Maria said gently, setting the water down in front of him. "Are you here by yourself?" The boy nodded, trying to look more confident than he felt. "My dad's coming to pick me up soon. He's just running a little late." Maria studied his face. There was something about the way he said it that made her think this wasn't the first time this had happened. She placed the menu in front of him and smiled. "Well, take your time looking at what you'd like to eat. I'll be right over here if you need anything." She went back to her cleaning, but found herself glancing over at the boy every few minutes. He was studying the menu intently, his finger tracing the prices next to each item. She watched as his face fell slightly, and he closed the menu, pushing it to the side. 20 minutes passed. The boy just sat there, occasionally sipping his water and checking his phone. His stomach growled loudly enough that Maria could hear it from across the diner. She felt her heart tug, remembering all the times she had to tell Lily they couldn't afford something she wanted, seeing that same disappointed look on her daughter's face. Maria walked back over to the booth. "Have you decided what you'd like to order?" The boy looked up at her with big, tired eyes. I'm not really hungry yet. Can I just have another glass of water?" But even as he said it, his stomach growled again, betraying his words. Maria noticed his hand instinctively go to his belly, trying to quiet the sound. She also noticed how he kept glancing at the prices on the menu, and how he had checked his pockets several times, clearly counting whatever money he had. "Are you sure you're not hungry?" Maria asked softly. "You've been here for a while." The boy nodded quickly, maybe a little too quickly. "Yeah, I'm fine. My dad should be here any minute." Maria's heart broke a little more. She recognized the pride in his voice, The same pride she felt when she had to decline help from well-meaning friends or family members. The same pride that made her work 2 jobs instead of asking for assistance. This little boy was trying so hard to be grown up to not be a burden. She went back to the counter, but her mind kept drifting to the child sitting alone in the booth. She thought about Lily, safe and warm in Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment. She thought about all the nights she had worried about providing for her daughter, all the times she had gone without so Lily could have what she needed. The boy's phone buzzed, and Maria watched as he answered it quickly. She couldn't hear the conversation, but she could see his face fall. When he hung up, he slumped back in the booth, looking smaller than before. He checked the time on his phone and sighed, a sound too heavy for someone so young. Another 30 minutes went by. The trucker paid his bill and left. The elderly couple finished their pie and shuffled out into the night. The regular customer with the meatloaf dinner waved goodbye as he headed home. Now it was just Maria, the boy, and the cook in the back who was already starting to clean up for the night. Maria couldn't stand it anymore. Every motherly instinct in her body was screaming at her to do something. She walked over to the boy's table and sat down across from him. "Honey, what's your name?" she asked gently. "Kevin," he replied quietly. "Well, Kevin, I'm Maria, and I'm a mom, so I know when a kid is hungry. Your dad might be running really late and you need to eat something." Kevin's eyes filled with tears, but he blinked them back quickly. "I have money," he said, pulling out a crumpled dollar bill and some change from his pocket. "But I don't think it's enough for anything on the menu." Maria's heart completely melted. Here was this little boy, trying so hard to be independent, to take care of himself. She thought about her own struggles, about choosing between paying the electric bill or buying groceries. But looking at Kevin's face, she knew she had to help, even if it meant her own wallet would be a little lighter. "You know what?" Maria said, standing up. "I think we might have a canceled order in the kitchen. Someone ordered a grilled cheese sandwich and chocolate milk but never came to pick it up. It would just go to waste if nobody eats it. Would you like it?" Kevin's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really, are you sure it's okay?" Maria nodded, already heading toward the kitchen. "Absolutely. We can't let good food go to waste." As she prepared the sandwich, Maria felt a warmth in her chest despite her own worries about money. Sometimes, she thought, the best thing you two can do is help someone else even when you're struggling yourself. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's exactly what the world needs. Maria walked into the kitchen, her heart racing a little as she thought about what she was about to do. The cook, Tommy, was already washing dishes and getting ready to close up for the night. He looked up when she came in, grease-stained apron tied around his large belly, a kind smile on his weathered face. "Hey, Maria. Need something?" Tommy asked, not stopping his scrubbing. "Can you make me a grilled cheese and get a chocolate milk ready? And maybe heat up some of that tomato soup too," Maria said, trying to sound casual even though her mind was calculating how much this was going to cost her. She knew she'd have to pay for it out of her own pocket, and that money was supposed to go toward Lily's school supplies. Tommy raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. He'd been working at the diner for 15 years and had seen Maria's generous heart get the better of her before. "Coming right up, sweetheart." While Tommy prepared the food, Maria stood there wrestling with herself. The logical part of her brain was screaming that she couldn't afford this. She had exactly $43 in her checking account, and payday wasn't until Friday. That money needed to last for groceries, gas, and maybe a small treat for Lily if there was anything left over. But then she thought about Kevin sitting alone in that booth, trying so hard to be brave while his stomach growled with hunger. She thought about the crumpled dollar bill he'd shown her, probably saved from lunch money or found in couch cushions. She thought about her own daughter and how she'd want someone to help Lily if she were ever in the same situation. Tommy slid the plate across the metal counter. The grilled cheese was golden brown and cut diagonally, just the way kids liked it. Steam rose from the bowl of tomato soup, and the chocolate milk looked cold and refreshing. Maria's own stomach growled as she looked at the food, reminding her that she'd only had a stale donut for lunch. "Thanks, Tommy," she said, picking up the tray. "You're a good person, Maria," Tommy said quietly, turning back to his dishes. But don't forget to take care of yourself too. Maria walked back out to the dining area, balancing the tray carefully. Kevin was still sitting in the booth, now working on what looked like math homework. His pencil was worn down to a tiny stub, and he was erasing something for the third time. As she got closer, Maria could see the problems on the paper were pretty advanced for a kid his age. "Here we go," Maria said cheerfully, setting the tray down in front of Kevin. 1 grilled cheese sandwich, tomato soup, and chocolate milk. "The previous customer ordered extra soup, so you're getting a bonus." Kevin's eyes went wide as he stared at the food. For a moment, Maria thought he might cry. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the sandwich, and she could see him trying to control his emotions. "This is really okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Absolutely," Maria said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Mind if I sit with you while you eat? It gets a little lonely out here when it's this quiet." Kevin nodded eagerly and took his first bite of the sandwich. The way his face lit up broke Maria's heart and warmed it at the same time. He chewed slowly like he was savoring every single bite. When he dipped the sandwich into the soup, a little bit dripped onto his homework. "Oh no," Kevin said, quickly trying to wipe it off with a napkin. "Don't worry about it," Maria laughed. "A little soup never hurt anyone's homework. What are you working on there?" "Math," Kevin said between bites. "We're doing fractions and decimals. It's pretty hard, but I like it. My teacher says I'm good at math." Maria looked at the problems on the paper and was impressed. These were definitely advanced for elementary school. "Wow, you are good at math. I struggled with this stuff when I was your age. Actually, I still struggle with it now." Kevin smiled, a real smile this time, not the forced brave one he'd been wearing earlier. "My dad helps me sometimes, but he's been working a lot lately. He takes extra shifts so we can save up for things." "What kind of work does your dad do?" Maria asked, genuinely curious. "He's a security guard," Kevin said proudly. "He works at office buildings and sometimes at events. He says he keeps people safe. Sometimes he has to work all night and sometimes he gets called in when there's an emergency." Maria nodded, understanding more about Kevin's situation. Security work often meant unpredictable hours and last-minute calls. She could imagine Kevin's dad getting stuck at work, unable to leave his post, probably worried sick about his son. Kevin continued eating, and Maria noticed he was pacing himself, making the food last. It reminded her of how she used to eat when money was even tighter than it was now, back when Lily was a baby and Maria was trying to make every meal stretch as far as possible. "You know," Maria said, "I have a daughter about your age. Her name is Lily. She's 6 and just started first grade. She loves math too, but she's more into reading. She could read a whole book in one day if I let her." "That's cool," Kevin said, taking a sip of his chocolate milk. "I like reading too, but math makes more sense to me. Numbers always have the right answer, you know? With reading, sometimes I don't understand what the story is trying to say." Maria smiled. "That's a very wise way to think about it. Numbers are definitely more straightforward than feelings and emotions." As Kevin finished his sandwich and started on the soup, Maria found herself really enjoying their conversation. There was something mature about the way Kevin spoke, like he'd been forced to grow up faster than most kids his age. She recognized that quality because she saw it in Lily too sometimes. "Can I ask you something?" Kevin said, looking up from his soup. "Of course. Why are you being so nice to me? I'm just a kid and you don't even know me." The question caught Maria off guard. She thought for a moment about how to answer honestly, without making Kevin feel like a charity case. "Well," she said slowly, "I think when we see someone who needs help and we're able to help, we should do it. It doesn't matter if they're a kid or a grown-up or if we know them or not. Besides, I'm a mom and moms have a special radar for when kids need taking care of." Kevin nodded seriously like he was filing this information away for future reference. "My dad says the same thing about helping people. He says that's why he likes his job, because he gets to help keep people safe." "Your dad sounds like a good man," Maria said. "He is," Kevin replied firmly. "He works really hard. Sometimes he's so tired when he comes home that he falls asleep on the couch still wearing his uniform. But he always makes sure I have what I need." Maria felt a lump forming in her throat. She could picture this dedicated father, working multiple shifts to provide for his son, probably sacrificing his own needs, just like she did for Lily. Kevin finished the last spoonful of soup and wiped his mouth with the napkin. "Thank you so much for the food, Miss Maria. It was really good. I promise I'll pay you back someday when I have more money." He reached into his pocket and pulled out that crumpled dollar bill again, placing it on the table. "I know it's not enough, but it's all I have right now." Maria gently pushed the money back toward Kevin. "You keep that money, honey. This meal was already paid for, remember? The person who ordered it just never came to pick it up." "Are you sure?" Kevin asked, but Maria could see the relief in his eyes. "I'm absolutely sure," Maria said firmly. "Besides, I have a feeling you're going to need that dollar for something important." Just then, Kevin's phone buzzed. He looked at it and his face fell slightly. "Dad says he's still going to be a while. There was some kind of problem at work and he can't leave yet." Maria looked at the clock. It was almost 11:30, well, past the time most kids Kevin's age should be up. "How about you work on your homework while you wait? I need to finish cleaning up anyway, so I'll be right here if you need anything." Kevin smiled gratefully and went back to his math problems. Maria began wiping down tables again, but she kept glancing over at the boy in the booth. Something told her this was just the beginning of their story together. The clock on the diner wall now showed 11:45 p.m., and Maria was starting to feel genuinely worried. Kevin had been sitting in that booth for over 3 hours, and his dad still hadn't arrived. The boy was trying his best to stay awake, but Maria could see him fighting off sleep as he worked on his homework. Every few minutes his head would start to nod, and then he'd jerk awake and go back to his math problems. Tommy had already finished cleaning the kitchen and said goodnight, leaving just Maria and Kevin in the nearly empty diner. The manager, Mr. Peterson, had left around 10:30 after counting the register, reminding Maria to lock up when she was done. Technically, her shift had ended an hour ago, but there was no way she was going to leave Kevin alone. "Hey, sweetie," Maria said, softly walking over to Kevin's booth. "How are you doing over here?" Kevin looked up at her with tired eyes. "I'm okay. Dad texted me a few minutes ago. He said there was some kind of emergency at one of the buildings he guards, and he can't leave until the police finish their investigation." Maria's heart sank. She could only imagine how worried Kevin's father must be, stuck at work while his son waited alone in a diner. She also couldn't help but think about her own daughter, safe and sound with Mrs. Rodriguez, and how panicked she would feel if she were in Kevin's dad's situation. "Did he say how much longer it might be?" Maria asked, sitting down across from Kevin. Kevin shook his head. "He doesn't know. He sounded really stressed on the phone. I told him I was fine and that you were taking good care of me, and that seemed to help a little." The fact that Kevin was trying to comfort his worried father while sitting alone in a diner late at night made Maria's chest tight with emotion. This kid was showing more maturity than many adults she knew. "Kevin, honey, I don't feel comfortable leaving you here by yourself, and I can't stay much longer because I need to get home to my daughter. Would it be okay if I drove you home? You could wait for your dad there where you'd be more comfortable." Kevin's eyes widened. "You would do that? But what about stranger danger? My dad always tells me never to go anywhere with people I don't know." Maria smiled at his caution. "Your dad is absolutely right to teach you that. It's a very important rule. But this is a special situation, isn't it? How about this? You call your dad right now and ask him if it's okay. If he says yes, then we'll go. If he says no, we'll figure out something else." Kevin nodded and dialed his father's number. Maria could hear the phone ringing, and then a man's voice answered, sounding frazzled and exhausted. "Dad? It's me," Kevin said. "The nice lady at the diner wants to drive me home so I can wait for you there. Her name is Maria, and she's been taking really good care of me." Maria couldn't hear the father's response, but she could tell he was asking Kevin questions. Kevin answered each one patiently, describing Maria and explaining how long he'd been at the diner. "Do you want to talk to her?" Kevin asked, then looked at Maria. "My dad wants to talk to you." Maria took the phone, her heart racing a little. She'd never been in a situation like this before, and she hoped Kevin's father wouldn't think she had bad intentions. "Hello, this is Maria," she said. "Hi, Maria. This is David, Kevin's dad. The man's voice was deep and tired, but Maria could hear the relief in it. I can't tell you how grateful I am that you've been looking out for my son. I'm so sorry about this whole situation. Please don't apologize, Maria said quickly. Kevin is a wonderful boy and I'm happy to help. I'm a single mom myself, so I understand how these things can happen with work. Kevin said you offered to drive him home. I hate to ask this of a stranger, but would you be willing to do that? I'm stuck. Here for at least another hour, maybe 2, and I don't want him sitting in the diner all night. Of course, Maria said without hesitation. I wouldn't have offered if I wasn't comfortable with it. Kevin can give me your address and I'll make sure he gets home safely. Thank you so much, David said, and Maria could hear the emotion in his voice. Kevin, are you there? Kevin took the phone back. Yeah, Dad, I'm here. Okay, buddy. You go with Miss Maria, and I'll be home as soon as I can. You have your key, right? Yes, I have it, Kevin said, patting his pocket. Good. I love you, and I'll see you soon. I love you too, Dad. Kevin hung up and looked at Maria with a mixture of relief and nervousness. He said it's okay. Our apartment isn't too far from here. Maria gathered up Kevin's homework and helped him pack his backpack. As they walked toward the door, she made sure to turn off all the lights and lock up the diner properly. In the parking lot, Kevin stopped and stared at Maria's old Honda Civic. Is that your car? He asked. Yep, that's my trusty ride, Maria said, unlocking the doors. She's not much to look at, but she gets me where I need to go. As they drove through the quiet streets, Kevin gave Maria directions to his apartment complex. The neighborhood was modest but well-maintained, with small apartment buildings lined up along tree-lined streets. It reminded Maria of her own neighborhood, where working families did their best to make ends meet. Turn left here, Kevin said, pointing to a street corner. Our building is the blue one right there. Maria pulled into the parking lot of a 2-story apartment building. It was older but clean, with small balconies and flower boxes under some of the windows. She could see that someone had made an effort to make the place feel like home. This is nice, Maria said, looking around. Which apartment is yours? Second floor, apartment 2B, Kevin said, unbuckling his seatbelt. The one with the basketball hoop on the balcony. Dad put that up for me last month. As they walked up the outdoor staircase, Kevin pulled out his key and unlocked the front door. The apartment was small but tidy, with a couch that looked like it had seen better days but was covered with a colorful blanket. There were framed photos on a small table, and Maria could see pictures of Kevin with a tall man who must be his father. In one photo, there was a woman with them, and Maria realized this must be Kevin's mother who had passed away. Would you like some water or anything? Kevin asked politely. I know how to make coffee if you want some. That's very sweet of you to offer, but I should probably head home, Maria said. My daughter will be wondering where I am if I'm too late. Kevin nodded, understanding. Thank you so much for everything tonight, Miss Maria. For the food and for bringing me home and for just being nice to me. Maria felt tears prick her eyes. You don't need to thank me, Kevin. You're a special kid and I was happy to help. She pulled out a napkin from her purse and wrote her phone number on it. Here's my number. If you ever need anything or if you're ever in a situation like tonight again, you call me, okay? Even if it's really late. Kevin took the napkin carefully and folded it up. Really? You mean it? I absolutely mean it, Maria said firmly. Sometimes we all need someone to help us out, and there's nothing wrong with asking for help when you need it. As Maria walked back to her car, she could see Kevin watching from his window, waving goodbye. She waved back and then sat in her car for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened that night. She thought about David, probably still, dealing with whatever emergency was keeping him at work, worried sick about his son. She thought about Kevin, mature beyond his years but still just a little boy who needed looking after. When Maria finally got home, it was after midnight. Mrs. Rodriguez had fallen asleep on Maria's couch, and Lily was tucked safely in her bed. As Maria gently woke Mrs. Rodriguez and thanked her for staying so late, she couldn't stop thinking about the father and son she'd just met. Something told her this wasn't the last time their paths would cross. Maria was just pulling out of the apartment complex parking lot when she saw headlights turning into the entrance. A white security patrol car with flashing yellow lights drove slowly past her, and she could see the silhouette of a man behind the wheel. Her heart jumped as she realized this had to be David, Kevin's father, finally making it home. She quickly parked her car again and got out, not sure why she felt the need to stay, but something inside her wanted to make sure Kevin was safely reunited with his dad. As she walked back toward the building, she could see the man getting out of the patrol car. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a dark security uniform with patches on the sleeves. Even from a distance, she could see the exhaustion in the way he carried himself. David looked around the parking lot, probably wondering where Kevin was, and then his eyes landed on Maria. For a moment, they just stared at each other, two strangers, brought together by circumstances neither of them could have predicted. "Are you Maria?" David called out, his voice carrying across the quiet parking lot. "Yes," Maria replied, walking toward him. "And you must be David." When they got closer, Maria could see David's face clearly for the first time. He looked to be in his early 30s with kind eyes that were currently filled with worry and relief. His dark hair was slightly messy, like he'd been running his hands through it, and there were stress lines around his eyes that seemed too deep for someone his age. "I can't even begin to thank you for what you did tonight," David said, his voice thick with emotion. "Taking care of Kevin, bringing him home safely. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been there." Maria could see that David was struggling to keep his composure. His hands were shaking slightly, and she realized he'd probably been terrified about his son being alone for so long. "Please don't thank me," Maria said gently. "Kevin is an amazing kid. Any parent would have done the same thing." David's eyes filled with tears that he quickly wiped away. "Not everyone would have gone out of their way like you did. Most people would have just called child services or the police." The thought hadn't even occurred to Maria, and she was surprised that David had considered it a possibility. Kevin was never in any danger at the diner. "He's such a good kid, so polite and responsible. You should be proud of him." "I am proud of him," David said, his voice breaking a little. "But I also feel terrible. This isn't the first time work has kept me away longer than expected, and Kevin always handles it so well. Sometimes I think he's more mature than I am." Maria nodded, understanding. "Being a single parent is the hardest job in the world. Trust me, I know. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and there are days when I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water." David's expression changed, a mix of surprise and relief crossing his face. "You're a single parent too?" "Yes," Maria said. "It's just me and Lily. Her father isn't in the picture, so I work 2 jobs to make ends meet. Tonight was actually my shift at the diner. During the day I work at a grocery store." They stood there for a moment, both processing this unexpected connection. In a world where single parents often felt isolated and judged, finding someone who truly understood the struggle was rare. "What kind of work do you do in security?" Maria asked, genuinely curious. "I work for a company that provides security for office buildings, apartment complexes, and special events," David explained. "Tonight, there was a break-in at one of the office buildings I guard. The police needed me to stay until they finished processing the scene and reviewing the security footage." "That sounds stressful," Maria said. David nodded. "It can be. The pay is decent, and the company is good about working around Kevin's school schedule most of the time. But emergencies happen, and when they do, I can't just leave. Kevin understands, but I still hate putting him in situations like tonight." "How long have you been doing this job?" Maria asked. "About 2 years now," David said, leaning against his patrol car. "After my wife died, I needed something with flexible hours so I could be home with Kevin as much as possible. Security work lets me do that most of the time." Maria felt a pang of sympathy. She could only imagine how difficult it must have been for David to lose his wife while trying to raise a young son. "I'm sorry about your wife. That must have been incredibly hard." "Thank you," David said quietly. "Car accident. One day everything was normal, and the next day my whole world changed. Kevin was only 6 when it happened. He's been through so much, but he's handled it better than I have most days." Maria thought about her own struggles as a single parent. and how different David's situation was from hers. While she'd never had Kevin's father in their lives, David had lost the love of his life and the mother of his child. Both paths to single parenthood were difficult, but in completely different ways. "How do you manage childcare when you work nights?" Maria asked. "It's been a challenge," David admitted. "Kevin's school has an aftercare program that goes until 6, but after that I usually take him with me to work if I can. Some of the sites I guard don't mind if he does his homework in the security office. But when something like tonight happens, I have to find somewhere safe for him to wait." Maria's heart went out to both of them. She could picture Kevin sitting in various security offices, doing his homework while his dad worked, probably feeling proud that he could be helpful and independent. "What about you?" David asked. "How do you manage working 2 jobs with a young daughter?" "I have a wonderful neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez," Maria said. "She watches Lily when I work nights at the diner. During the day when I'm at the grocery store, Lily's at school. It works out most of the time, but it's exhausting." "I bet it is," David said sympathetically. "Do you ever get time to yourself?" Maria laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. "What's that?" "No, not really. Between work and taking care of Lily, there's not much time left over. But that's okay. She's worth it." David nodded knowingly. "I feel the same way about Kevin. Some days I'm so tired I can barely keep my eyes open. But seeing him happy and healthy makes it all worthwhile." Just then, the apartment door opened and Kevin came running down the stairs in his pajamas. "Dad!" he called out, launching himself into David's arms. David caught his son in a tight hug, closing his eyes and holding him close. "Hey, buddy. I'm so sorry I was late." "It's okay, Dad," Kevin said, pulling back to look at his father's face. "Miss Maria took really good care of me. She bought me dinner and drove me home, and she was super nice." David looked over Kevin's head at Maria, his eyes filled with gratitude. "She sounds pretty special." "She is," Kevin agreed enthusiastically. "Dad, did you know Miss Maria has a daughter named Lily who's almost my age? And she works 2 jobs, just like you work lots of hours. And she gave me her phone number in case I ever need help again." David raised an eyebrow and looked at Maria with a smile. "She gave you her phone number, huh? That was very kind of her." Maria felt her cheeks warm slightly. "I just wanted Kevin to know he has someone to call if he ever finds himself in a situation, like tonight again. Sometimes we all need a backup plan." "That's very thoughtful," David said, and Maria could hear the sincerity in his voice. "Kevin, what do you say we invite Miss Maria up for some coffee? It's the least we can do after everything she's done for us tonight." Kevin's face lit up. "Yes. Please say yes, Miss Maria." Maria looked at her watch. It was almost 1 in the morning, and she knew she should get home. But something about this father and son made her want to stay a little longer. "Just for a few minutes," she said. "But then, I really need to get home to Lily." Maria followed David and Kevin up the stairs to their apartment, feeling a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. She hadn't been inside someone else's home in months, apart from Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment next door. As David unlocked the door and flicked on the lights, Maria was struck by how warm and welcoming the small space felt. The living room was simple, but cozy, with a well-worn couch covered by a handmade quilt, a coffee table stacked with Kevin's school books, and family photos scattered around on shelves. What caught Maria's attention most was how clean and organized everything was, despite the obvious signs of a busy single parent's life. "Sorry about the mess," David said, quickly moving some of Kevin's homework off the couch. "I wasn't exactly expecting company tonight." "This isn't messy at all," Maria said honestly, looking around. "You should see my place after Lily's been home for an hour. It looks like a tornado hit it." Kevin giggled at that. "Dad makes me clean up my toys every night before bed. He says it's easier to find things when everything has a place." "Your dad is very smart," Maria said, settling onto the couch as David went to make coffee in the small kitchen that was visible from the living room. Over the next hour, Maria found herself having the most honest conversation she'd had with another adult in years. David was easy to talk to, and they discovered they had more in common than just being single parents. They both loved old movies, struggled with cooking anything more complicated than mac and cheese, and had the same worries about whether they were doing enough for their children. The hardest part for me, David said, stirring his coffee thoughtfully, is worrying that Kevin is missing out on having a mother figure. I try my best, but there are things I just don't know how to handle. Maria nodded. I worry about the same thing with Lily and not having a father around. Sometimes she asks me questions about boys or sports and I have no idea what to tell her. Kevin, who had been quietly listening while finishing a glass of milk, looked up from the table. Maybe you could help each other, he said simply. Both adults turned to look at him, surprised by his straightforward observation. What do you mean, buddy? David asked. Well, Kevin said, getting excited about his idea. Miss Maria knows about mom stuff, and you know about dad stuff. And I could help Lily with math if she needs it, and maybe she could help me with reading. Maria and David exchanged glances, both struck by the innocent wisdom of Kevin's suggestion. That coffee conversation turned into weekly meetings. David would stop by the diner on his nights off, and Maria would bring Lily to meet Kevin at the park on weekends. The children bonded immediately, with Kevin taking on the role of protective big brother and Lily bringing out Kevin's playful side. Adults found their friendship growing too. When David had to work late, Maria would pick Kevin up from school and let him do homework with Lily at her apartment. When Maria's car broke down and she couldn't afford to fix it right away, David drove her to work and picked her up, refusing to accept gas money. We're helping each other, David would say whenever Maria protested. That's what friends do. 3 months after they first met, Maria was having one of those days where everything seemed to go wrong. Lily had been up all night with a fever. Maria had to call in sick to her day job at the grocery store. And then she got a call from the diner saying they were cutting her hours because business was slow. She was sitting at her kitchen table, trying to figure out how she was going to pay rent, when there was a knock at her door. David stood there with Kevin and a bag of groceries. Kevin told me Lily was sick, David said. We brought soup. And ice cream, Kevin added. Ice cream always makes me feel better when I'm sick. Maria felt tears starting to form. You guys didn't have to do this. Yes, we did, David said gently, stepping into the apartment. Because that's what family does for each other. The word family hung in the air between them. Over the past few months, that's exactly what they had become, even though nobody had said it out loud until now. 6 months later, David took Maria for a walk in the park where their children had played together dozens of times. The autumn leaves were falling, and Kevin and Lily were ahead of them, collecting the prettiest ones to take home. Maria, David said, stopping by a bench they had sat on many times before. I have something I want to ask you. Maria's heart started beating faster. Over the months, their friendship had slowly become something deeper, though neither of them had rushed to put a name on it. I know this might seem crazy, David continued, but these past few months have been the happiest I've been since before. My wife died. Not just me, but Kevin too. Having you and Lily in our lives has made us feel complete again. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I'm not asking you to marry me because I think we need to get married. I'm asking because I can't imagine facing the future without you and Lily as part of our family. Maria looked at the ring, simple and beautiful, and then at David's hopeful face. Are you sure? She asked softly. We haven't known each other very long. I'm sure, David said firmly. But more importantly, are you sure? I know this changes everything. Maria thought about all the nights she had struggled alone, all the times she had wished for someone to share the load with. But more than that, she thought about how natural it felt to have David and Kevin in their lives, how right it seemed when all 4 of them were together. Yes, she said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I'm sure. The wedding 6 months later was small but perfect. They held it at the community center, with Tommy from the diner walking Maria down the aisle, and Mrs. Rodriguez crying happy tears in the front row. Kevin and Lily served as ring bearers, both of them beaming with pride. David's co-workers from the security company came, along with Maria's friends from both of her jobs. The whole thing cost less than $1,000, but Maria had never felt more beautiful or more loved. In his speech at the small reception, David talked about how sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. "I never thought that Kevin being stranded at a diner would lead to finding the love of my life," he said, raising his glass. "But Maria taught me that kindness creates miracles." Maria's speech was shorter, but just as heartfelt. "David and Kevin showed me that family isn't just about blood. It's about choosing to love and support each other no matter what challenges come your way." 2 years later, they bought a small house with a backyard big enough for Kevin to practice basketball and Lily to plant a garden, Maria's.